So now we're back. A little bit intermezzo when it comes to the internet connection, but we continue. And what we had was this position, and that was the game between Victor Montian and Jakub Pajeken. And I think we had this position. Yeah, well, let's see here. We had this position here, and white just castled. And like I said, one of the things in this position that we have the unbalance between white, who has got now a better pawn structure, and we have not the least a black king that is already out and will have a little bit of a hard time to find a good place in the future, because, you know, the weaknesses here will make it unsafe, even though it managed to come to g8 and try to get a protection behind the pawns on the king's side. On contrary, one problem for white is that black is ahead when it comes to the development. We can see that black already has got a rook on e8, we have a knight on c6, and so black is ready to try to do something with his initiative and with his more space, and not the least the quicker development. And now white sacrificed the pawn on e4, and of course that is a logic move to play castling in this position, because you need to do something when it comes to development. And he took on e4 in this position with a rook. So now white has actually sacrificed a pawn for this situation. And in this type of Scotch games, normally you need to be very on your toes when it comes to dynamic factors in the positions, just like in this game probably will show as well. And you know, sometimes you sacrifice a pawn to get, you know, initiative and so on. So quite often there are very hard judgments to make. Okay, so in this position, black took the pawn, so now we instead have black who is in charge when it comes to the classical advantages. Check on d5, okay, and now, as you probably can see, it's threatening both the king and the rook on e4, so you need to play rook to d5, bishop to g5, and queen to, okay, in this position. So white's idea is, of course, that, you know, I sacrificed the pawn to try to get out of my pieces, to get the pieces out, so you can actually try to make use of the king that has been stuck in the center and on the king's side. And, you know, you can see here that we have some interesting black squares to make use of with the bishop on g5, not the least. But this is not a bad pawn on d4, because it distracts the knight from reaching c3 and coming into the game that you normally want to do, and so on. So, and if black now managed, for example, to swap queens, for sure black will have a better game. In this position, of course, the question is where to put the pieces for black, how to, you know, the queen is threatened, and I guess that if you play something like e8, then, you know, maybe knight d2 or even rook e1 might be possible, but I guess knight d2 is normal, and then rook ae1 is on, well, is on, I guess. So, okay, we have a position where queen h8 was played. And in a way, you know, I like this move, because what black wants to play is queen to e5, you know, to go to, you know, to e5 with the queen, and that will force black to actually take on e5, because it will threaten both these pieces. And like I said, with a pawn more, and if you manage to swap queens, no doubt black will have the upper hand in this game. So now it is very important for Victor in this position to keep up the pressure and do not let black find a way to swap pieces. So, okay, what happened? Queen h8, f4 came. The idea is, of course, to take away the f4, the e5 square for the queen, but also, of course, f5, breaking up the protection of the black king, the pawns on the king's side, and not the least, releasing the power of the rook from f1 up to f5. That would, you know, if black could play, white could play f4 to f5 here, black will have huge problems in the position. So interesting for me to see this position, because now it's a real tension. Who has managed to judge the position correctly? We have unbalances, we have the pros and cons for white and black. There are this move, you know, that is about to come. So it's every move now is sharp and it needs to have everything under control. Normally this takes time and yeah, very interesting position. I believe that the first thing I thought of was also the game, the move actually played, knight e7, because, you know, you need to do something against these with f5. Otherwise, you know, you might lose immediately with black. And again, one with the queen on h8, it's not only actually ready to go to e5, it's actually also protecting the d4 pawn. And you can see the advantage with that after knight to e7. If the queen would have been put on another square than h8, it would not have protected the d4 pawn. So that was one other idea. Okay, so what happened after knight to e7, because now it's very sharp, so you need to take care here in this position. I guess that if you, you know, like if you take on e7, king will take on e7, followed by c6, and so on. And, you know, with white in this type of positions, you know, you want to play f5 to get more pieces into the attack. You do not want to swap with bishop to take on e7. And also because, like I said, we have different colored bishops, and with different colored bishops is normally very good for the attacking part. And in this case, no doubt, it's white who has got the attack. So white wants to keep the bishops on the board. So queen to c4, very good. You know, it's ready to go to c7. Okay, what happens? c6, of course, ready to go, maybe d5 to release the tension. Well, I mean, white needs to be fast here, you know, because if black can play, you know, d5 and do something here to release the tension, put up the bishop, come the rook to e8, it's hard to see how white would be, can have a great attack in this position. And don't forget, black is one pawn ahead, so you need to take care here. Okay, so what happened? Take on e7. This is, I wonder if this is the best move, really. This feels wrong to me, but again, you know, this is a very difficult position to judge. Because what is happening now is that you swap off your good bishop, taking care of the black squares, on this knight. Okay, I know it's not bad knight, but the question is, what is the follow-up after that? What is the idea? You know, when this is gone, and yeah. Okay, so take here, king take, if that is the move to play, then, you know, probably something like knight d2 or something like that. Okay, maybe there are some compensation after knight d2, rook e1 is coming, knight f3 and so on. Okay, something here to play for. But what actually happened in the game might be a really, really good move. It was d5 played here. Okay, this might be very smart to put this move in, because what's happening now is that it's actually the rook can take on e7 instead of the king, like in the other variation, because, you know, threatening to take the queen on c4, and after you have taken with the rook on e7, then suddenly the bishop is ready to move out. And like I said, if black just managed to come out with the bishop from c8, putting in the rook into play on a8, black will have a clearly better position with a pawn extra. So this is a really, really critical moment. And I wonder if this was a move that Muntian had really seen. What happened was queen to b4. Yeah, it's hard for me to see what else you could play. One very good thing also with taking with the rook on e7 instead of taking with the king is that the bishop is ready to go to f5, and that stops the idea of f4, f5. That is the logical move for white to continue with. So yeah, really, really nice move, d5. I like that. It's also typical, this type of, you know, in-between moves that will make the difference in this type of position. And again, normally it's the stronger player who finds this type of finesse in the position, and that might decide the game in his favor or her favor. Okay, rook to take on e7. So now it's up to white. Okay, knight d2. Probably you just have to get out with your pieces. And the idea You know, of course, now white wants to play something like knight f3, knight e5, or take on d4, and so on. b6, rook a e1, take, take, queen b3. Now we have a position with an extra pawn for black, and also actually quite healthy pawn, because now we have this knight, this great, you know, this great pawn structure here, and you have the bishop. It's a play on both sides, so quite often the bishop can be better than the knight. The only thing is that the question is if white can find an attack against the black king. And there are still some moves that black probably need to find to solve the position. But if you play something, you know, if you can play like bishop e6, you know, because this is unprotected right now, so the question is how to protect it. So put another move that might be possible actually is actually king d6. That is a move I've been thinking of. Right now you're protecting d5, but not the least what is happening is that you get out of the line of the rook on e1, and then this bishop might even go to f5 or d7, where it might be better than on e6. That is the alternative. So because in this situation, after queen to b3, I guess bishop e6 might be possible, but you know, I'm not sure it wants to be on e6, and the king certainly want to get out of the e lines. So yes, I agree. This is a tricky position. King d6, king d6. Was it played? Yes, king d6 was played, like I suggested. I think if there is not a way to break through in the center, you know, with c3, c4, something like that, but then you'd probably just take it and bring out the pieces with black. Probably black will have a better game, a good game. So from my judgment in this position, I think that white is right now on top. Okay, knight f3, knight e5, something like that. You know, black will have some difficulties still to face, and there might be some tricks, and you have to watch out. But objectively, I believe that white is on top. So I think it's time to move on to a new game. Let's go back to our favorite in the tournament, Mr. Francesco Zonis, playing against Sondre Mela. You remember that we had this very interesting position, very unusual kind of London system opening game. What is unusual in this position is that black actually took with his bishop on f3. And what happened was that he was giving white a strange pawn structure with a double pawn on the f5. But he had to give up his pair of bishops. And as you know, normally in the opening, not the least, the bishops are a bit better than the knights. And then this came, knight to h5, also a bit strange looking move, but like I said, there is some logic about it, because now the bishop needs to decide, should I be kept on the c1 to h6 diagonal, or should I go back to h2? Well, I believe that what should be done is to put it on this file, the c1 to h6, and that was actually happened. Bishop to e3, because the normal plan for white in this position is after bishop g7, queen d2, you want to go for an attack, not the least with the knight on c3 instead of playing c4. This is logical to make use of a little bit quicker development of the pieces for white. Okay, c6. Okay, in a way this is logical, because the idea from black side is to play for a better structure, and the better structure is most likely to put the pawns on the white squares, you know, on d5, e6, and so on. Because what you want to do is also, you know, black has got two knights. You do not want to open up the game. Instead, you just want to have a very strong, solid center. You want to have an open, good diagonal for your bishop on f8, either on g7 or actually d6. If you play d5, e6, bishop on d6. One good thing with that is, and one problem for white with having this pawn structure, is that it's more difficult to open up the game, because either you play with c4 and opening up when the pawn is on d5, or you play e4 and try to open up the position, and that will not be possible now when you have taken on f3 with the pawn. So I think this is the plan for black, and yes, that's the way. As you can see, we have now this kind of structure here, but I must say still, white has got, in a way, in the long run, if you can open up the position, the pair of bishop can be very, very strong. And this looks a bit strange to have a knight on h5. So also for black, how to make progress if white wait, put up the pieces and so on, that it will not be so easy. One question that black needs to answer for himself is also where to put the black king. If you put it on the king side with a short castle, then you can say that the bishop is ready to go to h6 and maybe even to run forward with g4, h4, f4, breaking up all this pawn shield that you have in front of a castle king side king. So I'm not sure that will be the idea, and not the least now, because this was played long castle for white, that was played in the game. And now if you play short castle here with black, I would be worried because white will be very fast in the attack. So e6 came, g4, okay, logical, knight f6, okay. And as you can see, white is quite a lot ahead when it comes to the piece developments. We have castle, we have knights and bishop and queens out, and black actually only has got the f6 knight. The problem is, for white, it's not so easy to make use of this, initiative, what you can call it, or the faster development, because the structure is so solid for black, and you do not lack this pawn on e4 that can break up the position. So even though, I would be a little bit worried about being so much behind in the opening when it comes to development, still it might not be any danger. Okay, so white tries to bring up all the pawns, opening up the position, go for an attack before the king has decided which side to go to. And not the least, of course, you want to break with f5, get rid of your double pawn, and then the pair of bishops can probably be good. Okay, bishop b4, very logical move in the sense that you're actually threatening knight e4. So you try to bring out the pieces. You do it in a way so that it stops this attack from white side. So f3 came to take this square from the knight. It was ready to go to here to e4. So logical move again. The problem with this move, that is a little bit of a commitment, is that sometimes you want to have the bishop on g2. Maybe, well, right now it's not so interesting, but if play f5, you might play for the idea of c4, that might be on g2. But yeah, I think f3 is a good move. It's logical, but I just say that this is the type of things you need to think about when you play a move like f3. Okay, should there be a possibility to put the bishop on g2 or not? So, okay, for sure, with black here, I would try to go for a long castle myself as well. You want to go for structure, you want to play for a long, maybe for an ending, where you have this better pawn structure than white. And you do not want to have castling on opposite sides, because white is ready to go for f5, h4 and so on if you castle king side. So yes, bishop knight to bd7, logical move. h4, okay, white. Okay, I need to check this position, because I think that, somehow I like this move, f5. I think this is quite logical, to try to break up the position to before black still has got some moves to with queen e7, queen c7, and also now you open up for the bishop here. So f5, I like this move. Of course, the move that you have to watch out for is if you play e5 in this position, but this can be very, very dangerous, because also here, it's opening up, so oh yeah, this is a really, really good position for black, because you cannot take here because you have the check on the king. But no, this simply doesn't work. I think that f5 here, I really like this move. It's so logical to play f5 in this position, because if you can take on e6, for example, in the next move, suddenly white has not got a worse structure anymore, and you have the possibilities to open up position for your bishops. So I think that actually white has got a better game in this position. Okay, instead h4, but the thing is that now you give black the time to castle, huh? So queen c7 came. Yes, preparing for long castle, like I said, for black. a3, okay. Bishop d6, logical. You do not want to take on c3 in this type of position. The pair of bishops, still, it's not totally locked. So white will be able to make progress, So yeah. Bishop d6, h5, castling, bishop d3, okay. So the idea of white now is, instead of going for an attack on the black king, white will try to put some pressure on the king side here. Okay, king b8, rook h3. Need to check here. So he wants to play for rook h3, rook h1, take on g6, and then try to create something on h5. Okay, I mean, even though I believe that there was this chance of playing f5 earlier on that might have changed the structure to actually something positive for white, still it might be that white is, white is still a little bit ahead, and it's not so easy to see what black is going to play for in this position. I mean, c5 is not a good move, because not only do you open up, but also knight b5 and so forth, and so on. But more interesting is probably to play b5, knight b6, knight c4, or something like that, to try to create some kind of counterplay in this position. So yeah, and again, how to react here. And now this is interesting. I cannot say it. I think this choice to take on h5, in my eyes, this looks a bit strange, this move, because here you have a very solid structure with your pawns to take here. And of course now white will not take on h5 with a pawn, for sure. Then you have all these pawns will be like, if you do play like this, you have 1, 2, 3 different islands, and not the least you have a double pawns here. This is a terrible position, I think, for white. So of course what you do is g5. And the idea with g5 is that the knight needs to go, and then you can take rook take h5. And here, from my perspective, I think this is quite a good position for white now. It's a pressure on h7. Of course, the critical line, I would say, is to play knight to g7. And now, okay, probably you play rook h6, because it seems like this pawn here is doomed on h7 more or less. So what you want to do is to play, like rook h1. But then I think the only chance is knight to f5. And then the question is, what is this position like? Okay, you have a very strange position now, where you have these double pawns. You have this good bishop, classical good bishop. And when I say the classical good bishop, I mean that it is actually moving on the same square as the opponent's pawns. You can see the black squares, and the bad bishop on e3 that is actually moving on their own color as their own pawns. Normally you say this is a bad bishop, but in this position you see these pawns here, and you can see that there is a possibility to play rook h1 to take on h7, to play knight f6 to protect this pawn. Well, the knight is not very good here. And then you can play knight e2, maybe knight g3, and try to go for this one. Of course, white you need to look out for example, rook e8, take on e3 and take on g5. But as long as you play king b1 and so on, I guess that is solid, So here I would be a bit worried if I played black. So what happened in the game? So d take h5, g5 here, like this. Okay, is this the game? Probably f5. So instead of knight to g7, he played f5. Again, this is a commitment. And probably this is a better move. I like this better in a way than the other solution. And now actually white has got a very interesting situation. Should you go for this? If you take here, for example, like this, then in a way black will be released, you know, to take back here, knight maybe to take on d, to take f6. You have a position where you have these double pawns here, a bit strange. This is a bit more protected by the queen, you know, and so on. So it will be more difficult for white to actually win this pawn. On the other hand, you can play f5 sometimes, maybe. You still have this to go for. You have a little bit more space with white. So my feeling is actually that white still is slightly better. Maybe even this move is good, you know, like queen, rook to g in this position. Because if you start to push this pawn, you can play maybe like rook to g6, where it's a very good square for the rook, you know, ready to go for this. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. But on the other hand, you also have the possibility after, let's see here, h4, sorry, move on a bit like this. Yeah, take. That is one possibility. So f5. The other possibility here, of course, is just to continue to play, you know, because black probably wants to play a knight to, yeah, for sure, a knight to g6. But you have this weakness. That will be a weakness for long, you know. Double rooks, maybe even the queen on h2, the knight on e2. And the question is, if what will happen then? Like, okay, let's say that you play like rook d h1. I would play probably knight f8. Should you play, I don't know, knight e2 or queen h2? I don't know. Let's go for knight e2 and take a look at this one. And what is this position like? Okay. So, I mean, I still think that white should be slightly better here due to the, you know, more activity and so on. But black has really, you know, black has got this very locked center where these two bishops cannot, you know, it's hard to see how they can make anything. One idea, of course, that is always in pipeline when you play with the double bishops is to try to play on both sides. So one move I would like to start to think about if I was white is to play king b1 and play for c4. Maybe you should even play it earlier on, you know, maybe, you know, if you play like this, take f5. In this position, you even should start to go for this king b1 and c4 idea, you know, knight on e2 and so on. Okay, there will be a knight on g6, but with a queen, knight on e2, the rook on h6 or something like that. You know, it is not easy to see how black can continue in a good way because you have these problems with your pieces, how to make progress. Well, interesting, because was this? No, this was the position. f5. So I can understand that Sondre from Norway is thinking in this position what to go for, how to continue. Should you take on f6 or should you go for this other stuff? I think this was the game actually. Yes, this was the game. So now we have this position on the board. I think knight e2. Yeah, I like this idea. Knight e2 and then king b1 and c4. That's, for me, is the logical continuation, but I don't know. We'll see. What happened? Is there a game? Yeah, okay. Rook to h6. As you can see now, there is also one very important thing. There is always this trick, you know, this is hanging on h8 like this. So you have to watch out. Rook h6 came, g8. And now I have this position. And again, I hope that Sondre finds this idea, you know, to play king b1 and c4. Because for me, you know, I cannot see if black keeps his knight on f8. It's hard for me to see how white can make progress on the king's side. And with double bishops, you need to be ready to go for the queen side with c4. On the other hand, if you do not do this with white, king b1, knight e2, c4 and something, maybe black will try to, you know, just keep the knight on f8, play rook g7, be ready to go to the queen side with the rooks, rook on c8, c5, and so on at the right time with the right timing. And it might even be that black will go for the attack on the queen side. So this is a crucial moment, I believe, in the game. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to see this. So far, I think Sondre has played a really good game. Francesco Sonis is facing actually a very difficult an opponent, you know, so far, if you compare it with others. Also, you should know that Sondre has got 22-23, so the difference is only, I say only, 300 points, but in some other games we actually have 400 or even close to 450 ELO points difference, so it's a little bit more close here. On the other hand, you know, from 22-23 to 25-31, it's quite a big gap to fill in if you have the lower rating. So let's go back and see the other games. We had this between Abdraulf and Mai, and I said that, you know, a little bit easier for white in the beginning, with an easy idea when it comes to this type of position, where we have an extra pawn on d4. It's a double pawn for black. On the other hand, I said also that it's not so easy for white to find the right way to continue, because you do not have any real weaknesses to go for. You'll have this very simple idea to swap pieces, to go for a pawn ending, but if black do not let you swap pieces so easily, how can you make progress? And I have seen many white players getting, you know, trying to hit your head into the wall and find some kind of activity and initiative, including myself, so I know what I'm talking about. It's not so easy to play these positions with white either. So, okay, bishop h5, of course. You do not want to swap on f3, because then white also will get the pair of bishops. Bishop c1, okay. b5, yeah, quite logical move in a way. Bishop d3, knight b6. What happened when you play this? Of course, this is a commitment to put up your pieces like this. And what white wants to do normally now is to play b3, c4, and try to get some kind of attack on this side now. It's also here that you have your extra pawn. The benefits for black is now that you have quite a strong place for the knight on d5, and you will threaten maybe to play knight f4. You know, that will give you the pair of bishops. With a pair of bishops, black will have one kind of advantage in the position, because it's still play on both sides. So, okay, let's take a look. c3 was played. I'm not sure this is the right method, c3, but maybe. Knight e5, yeah, you can see. Yeah, okay, this is what, like I said, it's not easy to understand with white. How can I be active? What should I do? And for me, with the last move, c3, bishop d2, and so on, it's like a little bit of a signal from white side. Okay, I do not really have a plan. I do not know how to make progress. On the other hand, Abdraulf is much higher rated, 24.95 against 21.83. So it's logical that you, in a way, give the ball to him and say, okay, you play and I follow. Then you just wait for your chance, because somehow black needs to take risks to try to win this position. We continue. Bishop d2, queen d7, rook c1, fe8. Okay, so now we're also with rook c1. Black is simply playing, strengthening the position a little bit. Now he is challenging the e-file. White couldn't do anything on this e-file, but black is playing rook e8, queen d1. Okay, so now take, and here you can see one of the disadvantages with queen d1 is that now you need to take with the bishop on e1, because otherwise you cannot take with the queen. If you take with the queen, you have, there will be a swap on f3, not very nice. So you have to take with the bishop. And now, okay, the logic, very logical. You can see now what has happened the last moves is suddenly black actually gets some activity. And with this kind of worse pawn structure, this is what you really need. On the other hand, again, if white just waits, it might be that this extra pawn will make it difficult for black to make progress. So I still think that it's not unlogical to play this safe position with white, even though I feel that it's like white really do not know what to do. So, okay, rook e8, logical move, bring in the next rook, take the e-file. Okay. On the other hand, it's quite difficult for black also to play on the queen side, of course, because you have one pawn less than white. But how to make progress on the king side, we'll see. What black needs to do is to get some kind of advantage to make, because now black has got the initiative, the pieces are a little bit more developed. But the problem is that in the long run is white, if you just manage to get out the pieces, then you can start a swap. You have this simple plan, so black needs to create something that is in his advantage. Bishop d2 came. Okay. Actually, now queen e6. This is this is not a bad move. Another move that I thought about is this move. This is also something interesting to try to, because what is now happening is that you actually threatens to take on h3. As you can see, if you threatens to take this, and then the knight on f3 will be in difficulties. On the other hand, if you play this move, and of course you need to answer yourself, what is happening on this move? But this looks, yeah, you can see here, this is very dangerous. Huh? Going to take on g4, king h1, and then you even have this move, you can see that black attack. You threaten to f2, and if you take, you take back, and you have rook e4 and so on. I believe this is a winning position for white. So, but Abdrulf, he chosen queen e6, and one of the advantages is, of course, that this pawn is hanging. You take the e-file. Yeah, somehow now I feel that black has got compensation for this bad structure. So it feels now like he is taking over a little bit black in this position. There's quite a lot of compensation now. We'll see what's happening. He had to take on f4. And like I said, if you play this type of position with black, you have all the same pieces and so on, you just have one pawn less on the queen side, 3 against 4, then you really need to have some kind of advantage of your own. And now black will get a pair of bishops. A pair of bishops is normally quite good in this type of position. We'll play on both sides. Say, he played rook a1, of course, threatening on a2. Black was threatening that. And now bishop c7. Yes, for me, the logical idea here for black is to go for this structure here on the king's side. You want to play maybe queen d6 and forcing g3, and as soon as g3 is played, this structure here suddenly might be able to go for. So, okay, g3 came, of course, this is logical, queen d6, like I said, logical move, bishop g2, and now, how to continue here with black? You need to create something, you need to do something. Yes, I like this move that was played. He played g5. It looks very strange to open up in front of your own king. But do not forget, it is black who is going for attack on the king's side. You have an extra pawn, on this side. So if you want to make use of this one, you need to go for it on the king's side. And you can put pressure, I believe bishop g6, h5, h4. This is the idea, I believe, and queen d2 and bishop g6. This is logical because now you have this strong bishop ready to go in here, but not the least h5 and so on. Also, another thing is that if you would have the pawn on g7 instead of g5, white might have the idea to play knight to h4 and swap off the bishop on g6 for the knight. And then it's hard to see that there will be any type of advantage for black, or even compensation for the worse pawn structure. So that's why I love this idea to play g5 first before you do that. Okay, but after rook e1, still it is black who need to, in the long run, need to show that you have some kind of compensation for the worst pawn structure. Should you maybe you should play this move here, rook e6. I don't know. Is that possible? Should you take on e1? But I like rook e6 because now, if you take on e6, then maybe f take e6, and suddenly we have a completely new pawn structure. And I guess that, you know, in the pair of bishops, a little bit easier to play black, I believe, even though it's not, you know, a perfect pawn structure for black, but still, it's not a double pawn anymore. And I believe that, you know, then Abdulf will keep on, you know, pushing this game forward and try to trick his opponent in the position. Yeah, well, interesting game. And I'm impressed by the play of Alexander May still. You know, playing solid moves, trying to swap pieces and so on. Okay, I feel it's a little bit passive at some stages. You play a much higher rated person. No panic, just continue to play. You know, this should be a win for Abdulf if you just look at the rating. But like I said, do not underestimate that these youngsters, these talents, you cannot judge them from the rating they have on the paper. A lot can happen in these years. You can raise your rating very quickly. And I guess a lot of the players are quite much better than the ratings say. So, okay. Let's take a look again and see if we find any interesting games. Okay, so we have, okay, just quickly, we have this game here. We have, this is a game between the number 2 rated person in this tournament, Platon Galperin, against Benedict Bream from Iceland. And I just need to take a quick look at the position. Well, you know, if it is white to play in this position, I guess white is winning almost, you know, immediately with a move like knight to h5 in this position. You know, if you can play this move, knight to h5, threatening on f8, rook to f8, check on g7 and take on a7, then you know you have a really strong position, or even play c5 or something like that. So I guess that the move I would go for in this position, it must be rook c8, because otherwise, you know, and the idea is of course that if you play like this, if there is a swap on c8, then it's play on both sides, then black will not be worse in that position. So I guess you have to take on a7, we should take on c4, and now white really need to create something here. But my idea was here also, if you play like knight to e4, you probably put the rook on c6. And the question is now, can white create something? I think this is quite okay position now. So this is, well, this is a really critical moment in this game, you know. Really, really critical moment. He's played good, Benedict, I think, you know, challenge his much higher rated opponent in a good way. I believe, you know, if black keeps, you know, keeps quiet and good in this position, what to say? We'll see. Interesting position, very critical. On what I can say is that black has now got 15 minutes left, white has got 55. And here we have got the disadvantage for black. You know, that, you know, you have so much less time. And do not forget, and I don't remember now if I have actually told you, but the time that they are playing with is 90 minutes with 30 seconds as an addition to each move that you play. No extra time within 40 moves or something like that. That means that if you think down your 90 minutes, you will be down to the eternal time scramble, you could say that, you know, you only will have 30 seconds for each move to play. That's very difficult. Not the least, and with this, in these rules, you always have to write down your moves. You cannot, you know, blitz out the moves. You need to write them down. This means that, you know, just to write it down will take you 5 seconds. You have 25 seconds left, and you have this type of, you know, delicate, difficult positions to face. Not easy. So you do not want to do it. This was played rook c8. I'm happy for that because it was essential to play this position. Now to take on c8, bishop take on c8. Well, I think this is an okay position for black. Probably you can hold it in that position with black. In a way, you know, you have your good rook on the 7th rank. You want to take on a7, take on c4, but on the other hand, then another pair of pawns are swapped off, which makes the defense a bit easier for black. So, well, it will be interesting to see if Galparin is strong enough to win this position. Maybe also to put up pressure on black, make it difficult defense, and try to get black into this eternal time scramble. And, well, we will follow. So let's go to the next game. We followed some other games here that I would like to go back to. Let's go to this move, this position. I thought this was very interesting. You remember we had this kind of Dutch position. Yeah, well, queen to c2. Okay, that's okay. bd7, knight f3, knight f5. Okay, that's logical. That's okay move. Okay, like I said when I showed this position the last time, what you reflect on when you see this position is the pawn on d6. And it's easy to think that, well, this must be a weakness because, you know, it cannot be protected. But this type of pawn you can see also in the King's Indian, for example. And quite often it's not so easy to make use of your, what you can say, symbolic advantage as white. You can try to put pressure on it, but quite often black can either push it or have other advantages instead. You know, if you play bishop to a3, maybe c5 even, given, no, it looks strange, I know, to give them the square, but sometimes that even that can be played just to have the benefit of, you know, making this bishop on a3 look bad. So let's see what happened here. That was a bit strange move to me. h3. I think rook d1 looked more, you know, in line with the position from my point of view. That is a bit strange. h3. I don't know why he played this h3. For me, this is, you know, again, like I said, you know, I'm not sure of everything, but you know, I can say when it feels like something is a bit strange with the move. It cannot be the most exact one. Well, and sometimes you check with the computer afterwards and you find out that, okay, there was some hidden idea that I didn't understand. Happens sometimes, even quite often, if I need to confess. But okay, h3 came. Black took on. Yes, I thought about that. Why not take on this one? Because now if you take, you know, you do not want to take with a pawn, of course, because then you will have, like in the other game we had, an extra pawn, you know, with black. So you need to take with the bishop. But now the problem is that if you castle short side, there might be like an f4, and this pawn might be weak. So I would watch out. So queen e7. Okay, here we see the idea of white. He played long side castle. Oh, this is great, because now it will be interesting. We have a position with kings on the different sides. And as you probably know, that when you have kings on different sides, that means that you want to attack with the pawns. So white wants to attack the black king by pushing pawns on the king's side. Black wants to do something on the queen's side, pushing pawns like a5, a4, or a6, b5, or something like that. Sometimes you also try to, if one of the players are pushing too hard on one side, instead you go for the center. So still, even though the classical idea is to go for a push on the flanks, instead you might, you know, for white maybe, you know, e4 and try to open up, or black then d5, something like that, if white is pushing too fast on the king's side. But okay, let's see what's happening here. And now it's interesting because Khan took the chance to play this immediately. And of course, what is happening here if you take c take d? I think this was a good move actually. I like this d5 because now if you take on d5, c take d5. You know, if you take here like this, just to make an example, you know, take here, or maybe, yeah, or maybe even, you know, maybe it's no. I think no. Take on the with the knight, bishop take. Then you of course have rook to c8. And suddenly here, you know, you have a very difficult position for white. Maybe not losing immediately because you can maybe play this move, but then b5 or something like that. At least I think so, you know. Take on b2. I have to watch out because you can give it check, take back. But okay, take. You cannot take with the queen, so you have to take with the king. Yeah, well, this is difficult position, you know. Black is winning simply. So this is not possible. So instead, white had to take. To play king b1, but now, and of course, you know, this is a isolated pawn on d5, but as we have the kings on different sides, you cannot play according to the classical rules, like putting pressure on the isolated pawn and so on, because, you know, there are some other things that is much more important, like you have, like you played in the game, rook a c8, you have an open a line on the c line. Here, c5, and black is ready to play knight to e4 to put pressure on the c3 knight. So here actually I think it feels for me like black is a bit better in this position. I would be a bit worried if I was playing white. Okay, play queen d3, of course, getting out of this pressure on the c3 now. Rook fd8. Okay, logical move. Again, like I said, knight e4 is very, you know, this is very tempting now to play. So here you really need to have some kind of idea. Okay, this is a good move. Good move now by Vidar. Knight to b5, because you need to put your knight on d4 or something. Now it will be interesting to see how he should continue here with black, because you know, if white can put the knight on d4, it's at least you have saved the position for a little bit at least. You know, it's not so easy to get rid of that knight, and it's quite strong on d4. It's actually the only piece that you feel is secured in the position. Of course, black can play around it, maybe play in knight to e4, putting pressure on f2 and so on. But yeah, so, but on the other hand, one move that you sometimes just want to play is like a d4 move in this position. You just sacrifice a pawn because you have your pawns here. Maybe it's not working, you know, it takes like this, but so then, now, probably this is too little, but I just say the basic idea when you play with kings on different sides is to have the initiative, to get some kind of attack, but I cannot really see that this is working. I would like to do something like this, but I guess here, because and this is what I wanted to do, take here. My idea was to play like this. Because now if you take here, you can take here. This was my idea, to play like this. And you can see that we have this nice you win the queen, but maybe in this position, let's see this position, maybe if you just play something else here, maybe. Because I don't believe you can take this pawn. How is this position here? You play queen e3. Okay, yeah. I cannot see that you have any way to put up the pressure with black in this position. Yes, you have here. Yes. Okay, so let's see what happened instead. a6 came, knight d4, and now knight e4 instead, like I said. Now we have a situation where we have this very, very strong knight on e4 as a compensation for this isolated pawn on d5, putting pressure on f2. So the question is how to react, because, okay, you can play like a rook to f1, but, you know, this will be stuck here. So at some moment, you know, you need to understand if you have to take on e4 or not. Queen to e3, well, it looks also a bit awkward on e3. Rook on C, you know, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, still there's some play to be done here. I cannot say. What happened now was, for me, a bit of a surprise. White took on e6, and for me, the strong piece in the white position is the knight on d4. So you really need to have analyzed this position to take, queen take. And now I guess the idea is to play like this. Take here, and maybe queen d4 or something like that, or take, I don't know if you want to take here, maybe. What is this like? Because now, you know, of course, d take e4, this looks like probably this is just a good position for white, because two rooks against a queen is normally a little bit favorable if you do not have anything else in return as black. You know, you need to have an post pawn or an extra pawn or some kind of checks against the white king or something like that, and I cannot see that for the moment in this position. So yeah, okay, let's go back. We'll see here, took here, queen take on e6, take on g7, king take g7. So the question is now what to play. So because if you play queen d4, the problem is that it is this weak square on c3. So somehow you need to get rid of this knight, I believe. So okay, let's say you play this move. This is logical, queen f7. I think you do not want to swap queens from what I can see. And maybe, I don't know, now you need to, because you do not want to take here, I think, you know. Do you want that? Maybe check here. This should be, you know, just, okay, good drawing chances, of course, for white, but no doubt now with this pawn structure here, you know, you have a king that can reach e5, be a little bit more active than the white one. It's hard to find a way up in this position. Then no doubt it's black who will be in charge in this rook endgame, even though, you know, rook games are always drawn. This is a classical phrase, but believe me, it's not true always. There are a lot to be played about when it comes to rook endings, and it's very difficult to play them correctly. So if you are the weaker player, you have to watch out. So what happened in the game was, in this position, queen take, bishop e4. This will be interesting to follow this game, I think. And now the question is, how do you continue? Should you take, I mean, this is a little bit, I don't really like this, because after probably you check here, you know, queen d4 or something like that. And yeah, I think that, yeah, well, okay, you know, probably queen f6, something like that. I would say black is slightly better in this position as well, so it could be, you know, but we'll see here. So if you f take e4, now I think, what about queen take an e4? That is also, because now, okay, still you haven't straightened out the pawns. But on the other hand, you know, you know, you're threatening to play maybe, you know, just to, okay, you take here, again, bring up the king even, you know. What should white do in this position? Or you even play d4, or maybe you even try to go for d4, rook c3 or something like that, and take with a pawn, and, you know, you have maybe a possibility to push a pawn to get a pawn and king up to e5. The reason for black, you know, have a little bit easier play in this position is that black is active, and the rules of the rook endings, probably you know that there is an old say that when you play rook endings, the three most important guidelines are activity, activity, activity. And what I mean with that, and what is meant by that, is it's, you know, you have to have an active rook, you have to have an active king, and not the least, if you can have a pawn to get, you know, like a post pawn, now then probably you will have all the activity you need to win the game. So that's why. So okay, so this is the position. Let's see if Khan Kukushari is tough enough to win this position against Vidar Gran. Like I said, Vidar can play. So even though it's 400 ELO points between them, I have seen Vidar playing lately, and I can say that he's probably a bit better than his rating. So I'm looking forward to see the end of this game. Okay, let's go back. Oh, let's check the times. Okay, they're more or less equal, so no problems for that. So we had another position that we were looking at, and that I think was Victor Montiel. We just need to take a look at this because this was so interesting. We had this position, f4 came, you remember this, and I said that probably this position is a bit better for black. And like I said, if white, you know, just continues and developing pieces and so on, probably, you know, black comes out with bishop to f5 and then e4 maybe, rook to e8, black will have the upper hand in this position. But we'll see what's happening here. Rook a1, c5. Is this really the correct idea to play like? Why did he not bring out the bishop? I don't understand that. Bishop f5 looks like a one, you know, it's the move I would have played immediately in this, to bring out your pieces, prepare your rooks to come out. This is very ambitious to play b6 and c5. Probably, maybe it's correct, but I would be a bit worried because now white very quickly, you know, if you had played out your bishop to f5, then you could have played rook to ae8, rook ae8 in this position, and suddenly, you know, this would, rook e1 would not be so annoying in this position now. You know, still, the white might have some tricks, you know. Okay, rook, queen b3. Yeah, I like that move. Okay, push. It's d5, king d6. Yeah, this is what the position. Well, actually, we looked at this. Rook e1, very ambitious. Okay, rook e1. I thought this was quite good for black in this position, but maybe I like this move, rook e1, actually. Maybe it's more play than I thought. So now black needs to take care, you know, even though this is very impressive. So if black survives, black will win. Bishop on b7. Should it be on b7? Okay, it's protecting d5. But for me, the normal is to have it on f5. I've been, you know, talking about that all the time. I feel a bit, you know, if this is correct. But okay, bishop to b7, knight to f3. Okay, what about, why not rook e8 now? What is wrong with that? This is so logical. Then I think, okay, this is good. Why not this? What is happening with this move? What is the problem with it? This is so logical to me. Swap out the rooks, and then, okay, maybe knight to e5, but you need to find some good move. Yeah, because what you need to do here with black is just to find this fortress where it's not possible for white to make any progress, and then build up your position slowly. Try to swap some pieces. And if you just, you know, watch out for this check on f7, well, look out for that one. That will be like this fork on the king on d6 and queen on h8. You know, maybe in g5 I might come to undermine this one, maybe like something like this. I don't know, rook e7 or something like that. Okay, you know, still white can play for some tricks. Okay, I say, okay, I don't say I would be afraid, you know, maybe something like this. And I guess black is better, but still it's a little bit, you know, you have to watch out. And the question is, what is the time like? Yeah, I would be, at least, you have to be on your toes. Look what happened. We'll take a look at the position. Okay, I like that. I was only looking at the knight to e5, but knight to g5 is maybe even better, because now it can come to e6, and not the least, you're threatening to play rook e6, and something like queen b5, or yeah, you're ready to go for, you know, if you play, you know, if you play like something like this, maybe you can play check here, you know, to go for, if you go here, there will be check on b5. So in this position, you can even take here. Maybe, I guess, because if you take here, there is the check on g7, e6, and you have this, you know, threatening this one. So, yeah, knight g5. I would be a bit worried here, actually, for black. Suddenly, it feels like in the last moves, black has not managed to, you know, take away this initiative and get the pieces out in the correct way. Somehow, I just had a feeling that no, the white has got more possibilities than just some moves before, you know. So let's see what happened. Queen d7. Queen d7, okay. And now, what is happening now? Okay. Is there anything here? Rook e6 looks normal. King c7. Okay. What you want to do now, of course, is to play something like, you know, f5 or something like that to get the queen to g3 check, and then you really have a dangerous attack, because queen on e5 will be very strong for, you know, well, this is very, very dangerous. I would be very worried here if I was I mean, also, you know, just let's say you play this move to check here, you give a check here, and the king goes down, and maybe even, you know, you have actually post pawn here. Maybe you can even play like this, you know, and f6, and you have to watch out for this pawn, you know, f7, and then push queen f4 and take on a7. Maybe white is just winning here, you know. This is, it's starting to look very dangerous for black suddenly. Do we have a sensational position arising? I strongly believe that rook e6 followed by f5. I think that Muntean might play the game of his life. Maybe not of his life, but at least this would be a really, really dangerous position for Jakob Payekin, you know. And also this, what you sometimes do, you try to, you know, to sacrifice your queen, something like this, you know. The problem, I guess, is that you give a check here. You take the pawn, you know, you take the pawn on h7 like this, and after that you will be ready to go for queen h4, queen g5, and so on, f5, and, you know, the queen is very strong in these type of positions. These pawns are a little bit, you know, away from being promoted, and the h pawn will run very quickly. I think white is winning in this position. So we have on the board the queen on d7. Muntean is thinking he's got 16 minutes left against 31. And the question is now, is he strong enough to find this rook e6? Because the more I look at it, I really believe that white might even be winning after rook e6 check. So very interesting. We'll come back to this game. So let's see. What do we... Okay, let's go back to board number one, because I want to see this finish off, you know. Like I said, it felt like white was good, but he found this... Oh, yeah, well, okay, good. Rook g8, 92, and I said that now rook to g7, ready to come to the queen side, and queen b1 finally, knight to g6. Okay, so the question is now, should you go for c4 or not? Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, well, it's double-edged, this move, you know. I'm not sure you want to play it, you know. So, because the pawn structure might be, but I don't know, c4. Yeah, but still, I think this is logical. For me, it's just logical, even though you know, you damage your own pawn structure. But the question is, what should black do? Because I think you even threaten to play c5 and squeeze black even more. Because if you take, the bishop will be fantastic on d4. So you need to take, bishop take. You know, okay, you have a strange pawn structure now with white, with this double pawn on the f-file. You have the d4 pawn, but on the other hand, look at the pressure now on e6, for example. How do you cope with that? King d7, something like that. Yeah, but and the knights here, you know, they are not impressive, and I cannot see this really, this pressure on the d4 pawn, and c6 is there as well. You do not really want to push the c5, because then this opens up and so on, and e6. I prefer white for sure in this position. Maybe, oh, I like this idea. Knight c1, knight d3, knight e5. I think white is on top here. So c4 I like. But it feels a little bit like white tries to just play safe, do not want to take any risks. So he played c3 in this position. I don't say it's bad. I just say it's not like you put pressure on the opponent, because the good thing with c3 is, of course, what you do is you just keep your great structure in the position from a3, b2, c3, d4. And like I said before, it's not easy to see how black can proceed, because if you play c5, then it might that you get a damaged position, and the white squares on b5, a6 will be more weak. So yeah, I would prefer to play white still, but let's see how this Francesco Zonis, I mean, he's much higher rated. He is the favorite of winning this tournament, not the least, like I told you in the beginning of this session, that he came actually on 4th place in the Junior World Championship with the same points as the winner. So it was just the separate qualifications that made him becoming number 4. You know, there were several players on the same point. So yeah, so he's obviously very strong. So rook e7, bishop c2, okay, king a8, king a2, white goes slowly, but I cannot see the plan. Rook b, you can see now that what worries me a bit is like it seems like white is not ready to take any risks, just waiting. And black is now trying, at least black has got a plan, strengthening the position with the pieces on the queen side, and in the right moment black will take action. So yeah, okay, this is a very important moment, b4, because so far white has had the idea of keeping this structure a3, b2, c3, d4. That has been the idea all the time, to keep safe, to get, you know, the pawns great. So yeah. Okay, b4. Now the question is, because of course what you do is that you black really needs to play like either a5 or c5 if black wants to make any progress in this position. And c5 is always dangerous, because then you open up in the center and white is ready to move forward, you know. And like I said, it's also this weak bishop on a4, you know, that can be a strong piece if you play c5. So I would be a bit worried. So instead he played a5. Okay, put pressure in that way. Okay, I like that. And yeah, that seems to be good actually. The question is, no, it feels like now black has improved his position a bit the last moves. White has been waiting, and when b4 comes, there are new weaknesses, you know, because now, again, you can see here, these rooks, you know, like, you know, on h1 and h6, they don't do much. And now we have swapped side, switched to the queen side, and here we have the rooks here, ready, you know, to go to a7, the queen is here, bishop here. You know, it's, black has got some chances here, I think, to attack the white king. So somehow black has taken over the game. So and now also, if you look at the time, Sondre has got only 10 minutes left, but Francesca has got 33 minutes left. This means that Sondre probably will reach this eternal time scramble, 30 seconds, the only thing that you get for each move. That will be difficult, because the real fight has not really started. You know, they have not been into real clinch into each other. There have been no real tactical intermezzo yet. And when those come, you need the time. So it feels like Francesco Zon is taking over. Let's go to the next positions. Now there is a lot of things happening now. It's so interesting, you know, this part of the game. Suddenly, you know, you have very tough positions in games. And we had this, you know, I loved when he played rook c8. I said this was a critical moment. Black needs to play rook c8 to be able to cope with this initiative that white has got. And yes, he took an a7, only chance, because otherwise if you swap the rooks, I'm sure it must be, you know, black will not be worse in that position. So, okay, take on c4. Now the question is how to proceed. I tried to find something with